Yo, welcome back everybody. I hope you guys are doing well as always. In 2025, Jace has been posting a lot on Instagram talking about how he's going to be going back to his kind of older style of music. And to me, that really means the more like melodic, emotional type of sound. So for today's video, I have a beat that I'll be breaking down with my boy Ty Carrier. We did a Jace video a while back, and if you guys haven't seen that, I'll make sure to put like a title card up there so you guys can go check that out. He did the melody for this one, so he'll be breaking down that, and then after I'll do the drums. So without further ado, this is how to make beats for Jace in 2025.
What's good, y'all? I'm Ty. I'm going to show you how I cooked up this ambient Jace type loop. These are literally my favorite types of loops to make. I really love how this beat came together. I knew Chase was going to go crazy with the drums. But yeah, I'm excited to get into it. So I was really going for like a bouncy kind of vibe with this beat. The first preset that I'm using is the Sine mallet in Xenology. And I'm using a couple different effects for this. First, I'm using this fruity panamatic to make the sound bounce left to right. I got some reverb and delay on there as well. Then I added these piano chords from Triton. I'm using the Digi EP and Pad 1 piano. But to kind of give it a more realistic feel, I really like to add these little spaces in between the notes. So yeah, pretty simple chords there. I'm just using reverb and delay. So then I layered that with another piano. This is also from Triton. I'm using the BD Grand Concert piano. This preset is the MG Thumper preset in Xenology. I think it just adds really nice texture to the pluck melody. And for that, I'm using Panamatic again. I'm also using a Shaper Box preset just to give it some extra panning. One thing I like to do with these really ambient beats is add a lot of vocal layers, almost as like pads in the background. So first, I'm using this preset from Xenology called Angel's Choir. And for those, I always just add a ton of reverb. I'm using ROM for this one and also a little bit of delay. I also added, I believe, the same preset. Yep, Angel's Choir. And this is just like another texture that adds a nice vocal layer to the loop. The next vocal layer that I added was this sample from Splice. I chopped it up a little bit. So that's it for the vocal layers. The next thing I added was this bright pad from Expand. It's almost like a really ambient hit. It's called the Glass Ensemble preset. I layered that with this string from Expand. It's called the Harp Plus Strings. I added one more texture here. It's a piano from Keyscape called Softest. I also added some reverb and I half-timed it as well. Since there was so many layers, I just wanted to add like a very subtle bass in the background. So I'm using this dark sub from Xenology. This is one of my favorite sub basses to use because it's not super powerful. Yeah, so definitely a lot of layers. For these ambient type of loops, I really like adding a lot of different like subtle layers and little textures here and there. So this is the full loop. I'm gonna play it through and then I'll pass it over to Chase.
All right, so over in the project FLP, the only thing I really did was just change the BPM. It was originally 134 and I just dropped it down to 132. Like always, I'm just gonna go over each of the drum patterns and then play the whole thing at the end. And I saw somebody in a recent video comment that they wanted to see more of like the arrangement explanation and like mixing and stuff. So I'll go over that a little bit as well. So the first thing I laid down was the clap. So as you guys can see, this clap pattern is a little bit busier than normal ones that I do, just because I wanted to give this beat a lot more bounce in the drums versus like the other just kind of ambient style of beats. Then we move on to the hi-hats, and it's kind of like the same idea where I wanted as much bounce as possible. So I didn't really add too many consistent hi-hats. They're kind of spaced out. Since those ones were pretty spaced out, what I did is I just added a delay to them. So I'm using the Fruity Delay 3, and then I used this ping pong preset and just turn the cutoff and the wet knob down a little bit so it's not like going crazy. Then the next thing I added was just like an accent snare. On that one, you can hear that sort of like super delayed, like reversed reverb. And for that, I'm just using this Convolver plugin. And what I do is you just right click on this like waveform and go to tools, and then you just hit reverse. So that's gonna like reverse the reverb that comes off the snare. And then all I do is just turn down the mix a lot. So again, it's not like super in your face. Then next, I just got an open hat. Then we got a little percussion element. And then last thing for percussion wise, I just added this little effect sound. It's like a camera flash, and that just hits at the 1. Then we got the 808, and this one I'm using like a stretched out Zay 808. He used to use these a lot in like a lot of his beats back in the day, so that's why I chose it for this one. So that's really it for the drums, nothing too crazy. Now I'll just show you guys a little bit of the arrangement and like how I mixed everything. So for arranging these types of beats, usually I just keep everything in like 32 bar chunks. So I'll just kind of like build out a 32 bar pattern and then repeat that a couple times. What I usually like to do is start off with some sort of like effect or something distinct to let like the listener know that like that 32 bars is just repeated. So what I have is just this like thunder effects from my 3K kit, and that just hits at the 1 of every 32 bars. So like I said, it gives a listener like when they hear that, it's like, okay, the beat restarted, like the hook's probably about to come back in. And I do this in a lot of my beats and I talk about it in a lot of videos, but I like rarely will take out drums here and there, especially for these types of beats. I usually just build the bounce to like last throughout the entirety of the beat. So if I ever like take stuff away, it kind of like ruins the idea that I had for that like section. So I usually just keep all of the drums playing the whole time, but what I'll do is just like cut out pockets to let the drums kind of like go away and let the melody breathe a little bit. So we have this first 8 bars, which is like intro, hook, whatever. And then I cut out 3 bars here. And what I do is I use an EQ to automate the low end of the melody so it comes back in here so it doesn't sound like too empty. And then I'll drop the beat right back in after those 3 bars. That's really like all I do kind of for arrangement. It's really all about like just kind of taking pieces to cut away to add like a little bit of tension here and there. And then usually what I'll do right before the beat repeats is just kind of leave a section without drums, so when the drums do come back in, it just hits a little bit harder. And then as far as mixing goes, like I said, I don't really do too much. It's really a lot about good sound selection as far as your drums go. But for the melody, what I have is just a couple EQs. This first one I have just cuts a lot of the low end out so the 808 can get through. And then I usually just add another EQ depending on the loop, if I want to maybe boost some of the highs or take some mids out or something like I did here. And then aside from those couple effects that I had gone over before for the drums, I really don't add any plugins to any of my drum samples. If the sample itself is good enough, you shouldn't have to add any sort of like compression or anything to your sounds. So for mixing, my main ideas are I like to have a couple certain sounds stand out specifically every time. So like my clap and my hi-hat are usually the loudest things besides the 808 because those are what like carry the bounce of the entire beat. So I want those to come through as much as possible. Effects and stuff, I usually have them turned down pretty low. Percussion and snares, I usually keep around this like 0 dB, just so they're punching through, but they're not like taking over the beat. And then depending on how you want your mix, like if you want it crunchy, I usually turn up things that have high end, like kind of up a little bit louder. So like your open hats and your hi-hats will be a little bit louder. So when they hit with the 808, it kind of gives it that little bit of distortion, but it doesn't sound too like bad. Really, it's all up to your own ear. If you think it sounds good, then that's fine. And that's really all I do for mixing. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Shout out to Ty for this melody. This beat turned out pretty crazy. Make sure you like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram and join my Discord as well. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.